And this is Max of Max CTCG. Thanks for joining me in another video. In this video, I'm going over my Centur-Ion branded deck that I played at the Rosemont Regional. I'll be covering it in different waves. It'll be a really long one that everyone on Patreon will have access to, as well as the shorter videos right away. But then I'm going to release these on YouTube, probably a couple videos a week at a time until the whole series is finished. If you want early access to kind of get everything right away, check out Patreon. It'll be in the gold tier list. So what we're going to go over now in this section is going over all the cards that are possible to play in the strategy. This is going to be a very kind of beginner focused section. So if you already know the basics of what all of these cards do, I would skip to the next section. We go over the decks. I'm going to discuss what I played and then how to upgrade. And we'll go through, combos at that point, and then side deck patterns and tournament reports, things like that. If you already know these cards, I'd skip this section and just follow the timestamps. If you are new, I want to always have videos that kind of help new players. I think it can be very hard when you're looking at a deck because everyone explains it like you know what's going on. It can be very hard when you don't understand what the cards do and the interactions and everything. So this is meant to be a more beginner approach to explaining all the possible options, things you can play and think about, and possible cards that hurt the deck. And we'll just kind of discuss through all this kind of in depth here. So a couple things to note about Centur-Ion if you are new to the deck is the deck really focuses on being a synchro deck where the monsters can also be continuous traps, allowing you to special summon them out during either player's turn. So that's very nice, allowing you to use the field spell, which lets you synchro summon when monsters are special summoned using at least one of your Centur-Ion cards to go into synchros. You want to make one new synchro every turn, yours and your opponent's. You want to kind of outgrind your opponent and kind of shut them out of the game. The deck is very compact, so you can play a ton of hand traps, I think up to like 21, depending on how many kind of extra cards you're playing. So you'll be able to really kind of lock out your opponent. And the big card that's really making this deck meta is Calamity. The deck can perform a Calamity lock under Nibiru and Droll Lockbird, two cards that usually shut down a lot of decks. And now can also even do it under Shifter if they have the right card, which kind of banishes all cards on the grave. Droll Lockbird stops you from searching, and Nibiru nukes your board if you summon over 5 times. And you can technically play around all of these, depending on your hand and what cards you have, with Nibiru and Droll being very easy to play around. The deck has some pretty good strengths. I think the deck would still be good without Calamity, but it is kind of that kind of broken card the deck has that's making it a lot more meta relevant than it probably would be otherwise. But this deck still doesn't have necessarily a ton of representation, partly due to the price being pretty expensive when the cards were released as well. So the deck has a ton of starters. In terms of kind of one card starters, we have Emblem of Oath, Stand Up Centur-Ion, Terraforming, which searches the field spell Stand Up Centur-Ion, Primera, Judea. All of these are more or less one card starters, but they require you to send a card to the grave, so they're going to be a 1.5 card combo. If you draw this plus any card, which is fine in pretty much any hand, you have something to send, you can do your entire combo. And the synchros either search or add cards by drawing them. So you kind of replace the send or a card that you lost to kind of make up your advantage. You kind of grind out that way. So the first card we have is Emblem of Oath. Let's activate one of these effects. Place one Centur-Ion monster from your deck in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. For the rest of this turn, while you control that card or any card with that same original name, not special summon from the extra deck except Centur-Ion monsters. And set one Centur-Ion spell or trap from your deck. Only activate one Emblem of Oath per turn. So the nice thing with this card is it's a really good card because it gets you to either part of your engine. So the deck has, I think, in my opinion, a pretty solid way of playing through at least one hand trap, because all you need to do to play is Centur-Ion Stand Up and then either Primera or Judea. And the nice thing with Emblema is Emblema can be either. If you already have Stand Up, Emblema could be the monster. If you already have the two monsters, either Primera or Judea, Emblema could be the stand-up. So if they hand trap you once, a lot of times you can technically play through one hand trap. I think math-wise, when I did this, it was around 60% of the time, depending on kind of what cards you're considering as ways to get to your copies. So you have a pretty solid chance with that. Another thing to note is that if you place the monster, again, you are locked into Centur-Ion monsters from the extra deck. But a way you can play around that is to actually just set the field spell and use the field spell to get to the monster you need. But that does require you to send a card. So just something to note with this card to keep track of. Then we have Stand Up Centur-Ion. This is their field spell. Cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control a Centur-Ion monster card. You can only use each of the following effects of Stand Up Centur-Ion once per turn. During your main phase, if this card is activated this turn, you can send one card from your hand to the grave. Place one Centur-Ion monster from your deck in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. If a monster or monsters is special summoned, you can immediately, after this effect resolves, synchro summon one synchro monster using monsters you control as material, including a Centur-Ion monster. So a couple of things to note about this card that's really important is when it's placing, so that avoids cards like Ash Blossom because you're not searching, also avoids cards like Jewel and Lockbird because you're not adding. So a lot of times with this deck you only need to add once, which is either the Primera kind of searching the cards you need, either usually the Chudea or the stand-up Centur-Ion. The other thing too is it cannot be destroyed by card effects while you control a Centur-Ion monster card. So this means monster card, not monster. So even the Centur-Ion cards, when they're in the spawn trap card zone, they're still technically monster cards, even though they're acting as continuous traps. If this said, while you control a Centur-Ion monster, then they would have to actually be monsters on the field. So that's a good ruling to know. And the other thing with this is you can only use each of the effects per turn, so you can only synchro summon once. So just kind of keep those things in mind. And a lot of times with this, I like to start with my monster. That way if they do try to ogre the field spell, you already have protection, or if they try to destroy it, you have protection. So it's something to know. But a lot of times they could ogre the monsters coming out of the zone, mainly being Primera, since that's your only tuner. So if they do ogre the tuner, you are really hurt there. But there are ways to actually protect your field spell. So you could either use this as a way to like maybe bait out cards if you have protection against a card like that, or you could protect your cards by starting with the monsters first. And then we have Terraforming, just adds a field spell for deck to hand, so it's an extra consistency card getting to your field spell, which is very important. And then we have Centur-Ion Primera. So while this card is a continuous trap, level 5 or higher Centur-Ion monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Centur-Ion Primera once per turn. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Centur-Ion card from your deck to your hand, except Centur-Ion Primera. Also, you cannot special summon Centur-Ion Primera for the rest of this turn. During the main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon it. So again, right now this is your only tuner. We will get another tuner in Infinite Forbidden, which will kind of help out having that extra name, even though the tuner itself isn't the best. So other things to note is that this has a nice protection effect, so level 5 or higher Centur-Ion monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. This kind of help protect your extenders while also protecting your synchros. And one of your synchros also has the ability to protect face up spawn trap cards from destruction. So that helps kind of keep this safe. So you can kind of create a mini protection lock between Primera and Auxilia, which is a nice thing to keep in mind. So when you get into a grind game, a lot of times I'll keep one Primera that's always in the spawn trap zone for protection and the other one that special summons out. That way I always have one live and I'm not technically losing one. Another thing that's important to note about how these effects work is that once you use the effect to search, you can't special summon them out again, and you can only special them out once. So it's not like you can special out from an effect and then special out from another card effect. But once they're special summoned, that's the only time you can do it. And once you use the effect, you can't. So if you normal summon Primera, you can't set another Primera or place one in your spawn trap zone and then special summon that one out. Once the effect's used, the special summon ability for all the cards are gone, and that's something that's in all of the Centur-Ion cards. Next is Centur-Ion Chudea. During your main phase, you can place this card you control and one Centur-Ion monster from your hand or deck, except Centur-Ion Chudea in your spawn trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. Also, you cannot special summon Centur-Ion Chudea for the rest of this turn. During the main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon this card. Then you can increase its level by 4. You can only use each effective Centur-Ion Chudea once per turn. So right now, this could be potentially the best starter in the deck, because if you have Centur-Ion Chudea or Emblem of Oath, this gets you to Chudea, you can actually do the entire Calamity Lock combo, which pretty much locks your opponent out of the game, under Shifter, which is one of the best hand traps in the game, because it's like one of the only ones by itself that can shut down pretty much most decks, since most decks require the graveyard. So that's something to consider with Chudea. It has become very important, and that will, affect some deck building decisions in the game right now.
Everyone, this is Editing Max. If you're enjoying the content, hit that thumbs up button, give the video a like, leave any comments if you have any discussions you want to start, and consider subscribing to the channel if you want to see more of this type of content. Everyone, thanks again for watching the content. I hope you enjoy, and we'll get back to it.
So again, pretty much any of these cards always get to one another, which is very important. And again, these have the same restrictions that once you use the effect, you can't special summon out. So these are kind of all your starters, and all you need is just a combination of any of these to start and to play through hand traps. And just one of these in any card will let you do the basic combo. So next we have our extenders. So we have Centur-Ion Emeth. It says during your opponent's turn, if this card's in your hand or grave, quick effect, you can target one Centur-Ion monster you control, place it in your spawn trap zone as a face-up continuous trap, and if you do, special summon this card. Also, you cannot special summon Centur-Ion Emeth for the rest of this turn. During the main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect to Centur-Ion Emeth once per turn. So this is kind of the needed card that we had before, because we had to have something to get off Trudea. Because if you start with Primera, you go Trudea, you have no other bodies, you'd have to go to Emeth. So most people played 1 or 2, depending if you're playing cards like Pot of Prosperity, because this banishes cards from decks, you don't want to lose all your copies. But we do have another extender now that can kind of change things up. I kind of like Emeth a little more, just because it's a nice way to use its effect during your opponent's turn, where Gargoyle's effect's a little bit better on your turn. So, but overall, an okay extender, but was the only Centur-Ion that really wasn't a starter for its monsters and stuff that when it came out. Right, and then next we have Centur-Ion Gargoyle II, and you can send one face-up Centur-Ion card you control to the grave to special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon Centur-Ion Gargoyle for the rest of this turn. If this card is sent to the grave as a synchro material, you can add this to your hand. During the main phase, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon this card. Then you can reduce its level by 4. You can use each effect of Centur-Ion Gargoyle II once per turn. So this card is very similar to Emeth and what it's trying to do, but it kind of has a different purpose. This can special summon out of the hand, where this card is dead in the hand on your turn, because the quick effect only works on your opponents to summon out. And this can send any card, so maybe a way to extend out. Plus it can chain block any of your synchros, because this has a trigger when sent to grave for synchro, and the synchros have a trigger on summon. So you could always chain block either Legacia or Primera. Legacia will draw, Primera will search. So that can be nice. If I had to choose one, it's hard to say. I guess I would go with Gargoyle, but I do like Emeth for its ability to kind of dodge stuff during the opponent's turn. So they definitely have their reasons, and I'd probably just play both because you kind of ideally want to have more access to names. All right, so next we have Wake Up Centur-Ion. This is a quick play spell, and if a monster card is face up in your spawn trap zone, you can declare a level 4 or 8, special summon 1 Centur-Ion token. It's a Pyro Dark. Attack 0, defense 0 with the declared level, but it cannot be used as fusion or link material. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your grave. Cost, send 1 Centur-Ion card from your deck to the grave, except Wake Up Centur-Ion. You can use each effect to Wake Up Centur-Ion once per turn. So this lets you use each effect, so you can use both in the same turn. It lets you get a token, which is cool. It'd be nice if it gave you the option to make it a tuner. That would be very helpful in this deck, making this card way better than it is, but it's already very good. And it's a searchable one of that lets you play under Shifter and make a lot of really nice plays. This also can send cards like Centur-Ion Phalanx or other Emblema cards, which you can combo with some of your other cards as well. So very good card. Definitely like a one of. I probably won't play anymore. Next, you have Centur-Ion Bonds. Another quick play spell. It says place 1 Centur-Ion monster from your hand or grave in your spawn trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. If a Centur-Ion Synchro monster is special summoned to your field while this card is in your grave, you can banish this card, and then target 1 Centur-Ion monster in your graveyard, place in your spawn trap as a face-up continuous trap. You can only use each effect of Centur-Ion Bonds once per turn. So this card is very good as well. It's one of those just base-wise, I didn't have anything I wanted to get rid of for it, but it is a nice way to kind of keep your grind game going, because once you start running out of cards to get from your deck, because you don't have very many Centur-Ion monsters, being able to get them from the grave is a nice resource. Plus it has the ability to kind of get them multiple times. Whenever a Centur-Ion Synchro is special summoned, not just Synchro summoned, you can also place another back. So it is very helpful for that, so that's very cool. And you can also use both effects in the same turn potentially, which is nice. Next we have the counter trap, Centur-Ion True Awakening. When a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, summon face a card from your spell and trap zone to the grave. Negate that activation. If you do destroy that card, you can only activate 1 Centur-Ion True Awakening per turn. So it is cool you have this. I would probably only play this as a side deck card for when I know I'm going first. But it could be a way to play around cards like Cosmic going second or different things, but then you have to give up the ability to search up other cards. So I don't generally play this, but it is something you consider playing as like a searchable way to out Cosmic if that's very popular, or other key cards that might interrupt your combo. Next we have Centur-Ion Phalanx. You can target 1 face-up monster on the field, banish it, and if you do, during the standby phase of the next turn, special summon that banished monster to its owner's field. You can banish this card from your grave, target 1 Centur-Ion Synchro in your grave, special summon it, but loses 1500 attack. You can only use 1 Centur-Ion Phalanx effect per turn, and only once that turn. This is a very nice card. One thing that's unique about it is that when it brings the monster back, it doesn't return it, it special summons it. So that'll trigger cards like Chimera, Legacia, Auxilia. Any of your monsters that have special summon triggers will actually get their effect, but the same is true for your opponent. So you want to be careful on what you're banishing from your opponent, because you don't want to give them like a Snake Eye Ash and then they can start searching and get a lot of follow-up unless you can kill them that turn. So important thing to kind of consider with this card, but it's very good since you can have the incursion effect as well as the interruption effects. This is generally the one I play, and at the most I would side deck this one. And again, you can only use one Centurion effect per turn, which would have been nice if you could have used both. All right, for new Centurion cards, we have Centurion Atri, our other tuner that we're going to be getting in Infinite Forbidden, which is very helpful. If this card you control would be used as a synchro material, you can treat it as a non-tuner. You can only use each effect of Centurion Atri once per turn. If this card is no more special summoned, and you have an Emblema card and a Centurion card in your grave, draw a card. Also, you cannot special summon Centurion Atri for the rest of this turn. In the main phase, it's a continuous trap. Special summon this card. So I don't think this card's bad. I just wish it did a little more, that the Emblema cards are a little better when it comes to searchability. You can always dump an Emblema card with Wake Up Centurion. The only one really worth playing is the Emblema of Oath, which is also a very good card to draw. But you could dump that with Wake Up Centurion, so that way whenever you summon out Atri and you have another Centurion card in grave, you'll be able to actually draw a card. And what's nice when you pair this with Legacia, which we'll get to when we get to the extra deck, it's a synchro that draws a card on special summon. You can draw a card off this, draw a card off Legacia, and you'll be drawing 2 cards per turn on each turn, pretty much, as long as this keeps being able to be special summon packed. So that's very good. It also has the option to be a tuner or non-tuner, so depending on the hand, if you draw like Primera Atri, you could still at least potentially go into a rank 8 synchro. So that's very nice as well. So, but overall, the effect is just kind of okay. I wish it was a little better. So next we have Emblema Atonement. So this is banish one face-up Centurion monster card from your small trap zone, and then target one card your opponent controls and banish it. If this set card is destroyed or banished by opponent's card activated effect, you place 2 Centurion monsters with different names from your hand, deck, or grave, and or banishment in your spawn trap zone as face-up continuous traps. So on the surface, this card is very good. It's a quick play spell. It can banish. It does target. But it's a nice removal card. But the big issue is that there's no way to search Emblema Atonement, and there's no way to get the cards back from the graveyard with Wake Up Centurion. If that's the case, then maybe this becomes a playable card for going second. It's a way to kind of stop your opponent, which is nice. But you do have to have the setup of having a Centurion monster in your spawn trap zone. But because it's not searchable, I just don't think it's playable. And unless that changes with the new wave and maybe a third synchro, I don't see that being the case. So next we're going to kind of get into our other kind of tech cards, non-engine cards. These are the cards that we can play to help the deck. So in terms of consistency, you have options for Pot of Prosperity and Pot of Desires. So Pot of Prosperity says you can banish 3 or 6 cards of your choice from your extra deck face down. For the rest of this turn, after this effect resolves, any battle damage your opponent takes is halved. Also activate the cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of cards banished. Add 1 activated card to your hand, place the rest in the bottom of the deck in any order. You only activate 1 Pot of Prosperity per turn. Not draw cards by effects turn you activate this. Our Pot of Desires says you can banish 10 cards from the top of your deck face down, draw 2, only activate 1 Desires per turn. So originally Desires was better because we only had Legacia, and Legacia had a draw effect. And the deck generally liked having the extra cards since you're drawing into multiple hand traps. We're searching a specific card since most of your deck is hand traps and starters. So if you get your starter, you don't really need any of these cards usually. And Pot of Desires was better because you just get 2 hand traps instead of just searching for the specific one you wanted. Depending on the deck, it could be kind of tight extra deck space wise. In the branded version I've been playing, I've generally only banished 3 unless I really need a card. Maybe I'll banish more cards to try to get to that, but usually I only went for 3. In a standard Centurion build, the extra deck is not as tight, and you could definitely find a way to banish 6 if you really need that search. The other reason Desires is a little better right now is because of the fact that Judea is a 1-card combo with Shifter. You want as many ways to get to Judea as possible. That way with Judea Shifter combos, you can actually kind of play through different hand traps like Ogre and other cards, plus really shut down your opponent. And that is a really good way of kind of getting to Judea potentially is Pot of Prosperity, where Desires is just going to draw you 2 random cards. It doesn't guarantee you might get to the card you need. Another engine you can consider playing in the deck is Branded Fusion. This is a very nice engine that I've been playing because it gives you some benefits. So Branded Fusion lets you fusion summon 1 monster, dimensions Fallen of Albaz as material from your extra deck using 2 monsters from your hand, deck, or field as material. You cannot special for the extra deck except fusions. The turn you activate this card, you can only activate 1 Branded Fusion per turn. And then we have Fallen of Albaz. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can discard 1 card, fusion summon fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters on either field as material, including this card, but you cannot use other monsters you control as fusion material. You can only activate the effect of Fallen of Albaz once per turn. The main thing with this is that the Albaz is a fusion requirement for the deck, but even as a standalone card, especially going second, you could still normal summon this and try to threaten your opponent's board, kind of fusing into any of your
cards here that we have for the Fallen Horus package. So it's still not even necessarily a bad card to be able to use. And then Branded Fusion is just a very strong spell card. And you might be wondering, it's like, well, why would I use this? Because it locks me into fusions and I want to go into synchros. Well, a few reasons why I like this package over some of the others we'll also talk about. You kind of have the fusion deployment package with Cartesia. There's some similarity with some of the cards as well in this deck, but I think this is weaker in the Branded package. You have the Horus engine. The Horus engine is a nice way to get a lot of bodies on the field and apply pressure, similar to what Branded Fusion does, but definitely more recursive and very strong cards. But these generally make you play into cards like Droll and Nibiru, which you don't normally do, which is one reason why I don't like that. You can actually play under Droll and Nibiru if you're playing Branded Fusion, so that's very nice. You also have the Bystial setup, which is something I would consider playing as like the second best option that I'd like to play with the deck. But again, these will still probably make you play into Droll and Nibiru as well. And then you kind of just have the more pure version where you don't play any of these engines and it's just all hand traps. And that's where you're backing your board up. But my issue with the hand traps is the deck has a hard time pushing through boards, and I have a hard time playing through disruption sometimes. If they have 2 hand traps, so hand trap deck only, I think can have a hard time pushing and sealing out games. Your engine is not good at pushing through boards. It's very like kind of interchangeable, so it doesn't do very much, even though what it does very consistently. So if you're not able to stop your opponent from progressing, having a card like Branded Fusion that could really put a lot of pressure is nice. And the other thing too is if they hand trap you once or twice, depending on your setup, if you can just get to the stand-up Centur-Ion, you can just do all your fusion plays on your turn and then synchro on your opponent's turn. And that's what I like about this. It's also a good way of playing through hand traps. They hand trap Primera, you do the fusion lines, and then synchro on your opponent's turn. If they hand trap 2 of your cards and you have fusion, you can play through 2 hand traps and still make somewhat of a board and make some presence. So that's really why I like the Branded Fusion package. Let's get to these cards down here, which are very nice. And we'll kind of get to those when we do the extra deck. Next, you have Fusion Deployment. This is another idea I messed with. I didn't have a lot of success with this, but the idea is that you can use Fusion Deployment to get Cartesia, and Fusion Deployment that says reveal one Fusion monster in extra deck, special summon from your hand or deck one of the fusion materials whose name is specifically listed on the card. You cannot special summon from the extra deck except fusions. The turn you activate this, you can activate 1 Fusion Deployment. Very similar to Branded Fusion that you can get out Cartesia. One of the ideas with this is that Cartesia can fusion summon into a Grand Guignol, and it just takes Blazing Cartesia and a Light or Dark. So what you could do is in hands where maybe you have Primera, you could do Fusion Deployment Cartesia, normal summon Primera. If they try to hand trap Primera, you can then fuse with it to go into the Grand Guignol. But then you do lock yourself out of synchro plays, but then you have Grand Guignol and Primera, and you could use those to synchro on your opponent's turn. So very similar to Branded Fusion, but I don't necessarily like that you have to potentially commit to locking yourself initially out of synchros with this line as well. And there's other branded synchros that work well with the deck, the special summon on spellcasters like Cartesia or Primera. So I do think the branded package is stronger and better on what it does, but this is something to maybe consider testing if you want to try it out. It does have some nice benefits, but again, I think this one's better. Next, we have the Horus Package. So the Horus Package is really interesting because it's very good, but a lot of times you want to be careful of cards like this because, like I said, they make you play into Droll and Nibiru, a weakness you don't normally have. So that does suck. But you have Mseti, Glory of the Horus. It says if you control King Sarcophagus, you can special summon this card from your grave. You can only special summon Mseti, the Glorious Horus, once per turn this way. You can use each of the flying effects of Mseti, the Glorious Horus once per turn. You can send 2 cards from your hand to the grave, including this card, add 1 King Sarcophagus from your deck to your hand, then draw 1 card. If another card you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, while this card is in your monster zone, you can send 1 card on the field to the grave. So this is a very good card. It gets you King Sarcophagus, which can get you other cards. It lets you draw a card searching it, but it is a very hard ash target because you have to send 2 cards to search. So they ash you, your opponent lost 1 card and you lost 2. So that does hurt. Also plays into Droll, so that hurts. It summons more cards, so you play into Nibiru, unless you can go into like Photon Lord to negate it by doing multiple 8s. I don't necessarily like how much hand advantage the deck loses with how much it relies on hand traps. So I think the Centur-Ion Horus version is fine. It's a good deck. It's just personally not what I like because of those reasons. You also have the field spell, Stonewall the Imperial Tombs. This card becomes King Sarcophagus while in the field zone. And during your main phase, you can add 1 Horus monster from your deck to your hand, then place 1 card from the hand above the deck. You'll use each effect of the Wall's Imperial Tomb once per turn. If you activate the effects of Horus the Black Deity, you can draw a card. So this is another way just to search Horus, which can then get you to Sark. So
It makes the deck more consistent. You definitely want to start with this field spell and then place your stand up because this doesn't need to stay on the field. But it is a nice way to get cards and have a good grind game. But again, just another card to play at the Horus engine, but uses more to duel and other cards. And then we have Happy, Vanguard of the Horus. You control King Sarcophagus and special summon this card from your grave. You only special summon Happy, the Guidance of Horus once per turn this way. If another card or cards you control leaves the field by card effect while this card's in your monster zone, you can target 2 cards that are banished and or in the graveyard, either add both of them to the hand or shuffle both into deck. You use this effect of Happy, the Guidance of Horus once per turn. So all the Horus can have an on-field effect and the ability to special summon themselves from grave with Sark on field. So that is nice. But Happy and I think Amseti are really the only ones worth playing because the others are a little bit bricky, and at least Amseti gets you the Sark, where the Happy is really the only brick in this situation. So that's nice. Another thing too is King Sarcophagus does kind of put your opponent in a weird position. So if they want to remove your Centur-Ion stand-up Cosmic, they also have to choose between the 2 options here. So that does make it harder. So that's a very nice thing to have with this package. The next package you consider is the Bystial Package. You can use this to make more 10 plays like Bystial Lubellion with Primera. You have also Bystial Lubellion to get plays with the Dark Monsters and Light Monsters, which is nice. And then you have Branded Regain, draw more cards, draw more hand traps. You'll bring out Bystials, make synchro plays. This is, I think, a very strong version. I believe this version is still going to play into Nib and Troll, just like the others. But it'd probably be the version I'd played if maybe the Lubellion is a little cheaper before I kind of think about the branded package, which I took from seeing how Voiceless Voice played it. We look at these Bystial cards here. Bystial Lubellion cannot be normal summon or set, must be special from your hand by tributing 1 level 6 or higher dragon monster. You can only special summon Bystial Lubellion once per turn this way. You can send this card from your hand to the grave, add 1 Bystial monster from deck to hand, accept Lubellion. During your main phase, you can place 1 branded continuous spell or trap from your deck face up on the field. So Branded Lubellion lets you either search cards like the Druid Worm or Magma, which are very common, or you can also go for the Regained, taking a lot of hand advantage, which is nice in this deck. Next to Bystial Druid Worm, it says you can target 1 light or dark in your grave, banish it, if you do, special summon this card from your hand. This is a quick effect if your opponent controls a monster. This card is sent from the field to the grave. You can target 1 special summon monster your opponent controls, send it to the grave. You only use each effect of Bystial Druid Worm once per turn. This is a very nice card because you can also banish your own Centurion cards, and because Auxilia gets them back, we'll get to its effect when we get there. The Bystials are no longer like a major weakness for the deck. Plus, you can banish your own cards and still get them back, which is nice. And this is a very nice card for putting a lot of pressure on the board because it makes your opponent send a card that was special summoned to the grave when you synchro with it. So you can usually combo this type of card with Chaos Angel, which banishes a card on summon. So you banish a card, send a special summon card. Get a very hard card to get rid of. Very nice. And then we have Bystial Magma. Says you can target 1 light or dark monster in either grave, banish it, and if you do, special summon this card from the hand. This is a quick effect if your opponent controls a monster. If this card is special summoned, you activate this effect. During the end phase of this turn, add 1 dragon monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand, except Bystial Magma. You use each effect of Magma once per turn. So this card lets you search different cards like Druid Worm for interruption. You could also search Gargoyle as a kind of extender in the deck. So there's some utility there, which is nice. Overall, just a very solid card that works well in the deck, and I like it for Chaos Angel plays and kind of the diversity in the meta for covering kind of those rogue matchups. And then we have Branded Regained. It says if a light or dark monster is banished, you can target 1 of those monsters, place that monster on the bottom of the deck. You do draw 1 card. You can only use this effect of Branded Regained once per turn. Once per turn, if your opponent no more special summons a monster, you can target 1 Bystial monster to grave, special summon it. You can activate this effect of Branded Regained once per chain. This is a nice way to kind of get recursion, which is nice, work with your level 8 pool. It also combines well with SP Little Knight, since you can banish cards with SP, and then shuffle them into the deck so they don't come back when SP comes back. So there's nice synergy here, and this is a very good card to play in the Bystial deck as well.
Hey everyone, this is Editing Max. If you're enjoying the content and you want to support the channel, you can check out the TCG affiliate link in the description below. It supports the channel and costs you nothing, and you'll just be doing the same thing you normally do when buying cards from TCG Player. If you're new to buying cards from TCG Player, check out my website. I have a section on it that helps out newer people, kind of explaining some aspects of TCG Player, so that way you get the most out of your money and don't kind of fall into any of these kind of weird things that some people do to kind of push up the prices of cards. If you want to become a patron of the channel, check out my Patreon. It's another way you can help support the channel. We have different perks you can check out, like a lot of archetype proxies you could see on the screen. Every week I put a new one out that everyone on the channel can vote on, and then those go to Patreon where you can print out. You can also join for early access. Some videos will be 1 day early access, others that are in a longer series could be, weeks out in advance where you can get the entire thing at once. Everyone on YouTube has to wait week by week for all of the videos to come out. You can also join for a exclusive Yu-Gi-Oh! Reaction series where I watch through the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and we can have a discussion in the comments and kind of watch through it together as well, plus other perks coming out in the future. Everyone, thanks again for watching the content.
So that covers pretty much all the engines. From here, we're just going to get into hand traps, kind of more summarize some of these to some degree. So the most strong hand trap in the game right now that's really versatile is usually Ass Blossom. Now in this format, it does have some weaknesses because if this is your only hand trap against Snake Eye, one of the best decks in the game, they could potentially use your hand trap against you to build a board even if you hand trap them and probably still beat you. So you got to be very careful with this card, but it pairs well with so many cards and it's very good if you have usually 2 hand traps. Usually you'll beat the extension plays that the Snake Eye deck can make. And the reason this card is so good is that it pretty much covers every area that's very good in a deck. If your opponent tries to add a card from deck to hand and search something, you can stop it. If they try to special summon a card from deck, which is very powerful, you can stop it. If they try to send cards from deck to grave, since most decks are relying on the graveyard, you can stop it. So this is generally the most kind of generic, best coverage card. And depending on the deck, you might not want to play this format, since it can, again, be very punished by Snake Eyes. But if you're playing a deck that has a lot of hand traps, then it is worth playing, because usually that won't happen if you at least have 2 different hand traps to use against your opponent. Next we have Infinite Impermanence. This is a trap card that actually functions as a hand trap. As long as you control no cards, you can activate this from your hand. So a very nice option. It's not once per turn, so if you have multiple, you can activate it again, just not in the same chain because the one will still be on the field. But a very good card, combos well with a lot of other cards, and is very solid overall. Next we have Effect Veiler. So Effect Veiler is kind of similar to Infinite Impermanence, but worse in a lot of ways, just because this only works during your opponent's main phase, where Infinite Impermanence can be good going second, because if you draw it for your 6th card, you can use it to negate a card in your opponent's field before playing. If you draw Effect Veiler going against your opponent, then it's not as good. Since it only works during the main phase, it doesn't work against like Tempai since they play in the battle phase, and other decks that special summon around the main phase, so they can play around this card. But because it pairs so well with so many other cards and can straight up stop the best deck of the game with 1 card potentially, it is a very good card still to play. Some of the benefits in this deck is that it's a tuner, so if you pair, let's say you Nibiru your opponent and then normal summon Effect Veiler, you can actually synchro into your level 12 plays, so you can go to Auxilia to actually get your Centur-Ion cards if you don't have any, to start your plays that way. So it's kind of an interesting synergy that works well with the deck, which is kind of cool. Next we have Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. It's kind of interesting one because it's also similar to Veiler. It's another effect negation. These are kind of your 3 main effect negation hand traps. But this one's a little different because it works when your opponent special summons a monster face up. You can discard this card, then target one of those face-up monsters, negates effects to the end of this turn. Also, if that face-up monster leaves the field, its controller takes equal damage to its original attack. So this card's nice because when your opponent activates a card that special summons, you can hit this card and it will negate its effect. You also can potentially burn your opponent, so it might put them in a weird position close to time that they can't use a monster, because if it goes to the grave, you'll get burned, so that's nice. The other thing too to note is that this card works on special summon, so it kind of depends on whose turn it is on which order it goes. If it's their turn and they summon a monster that has a trigger effect on summon, let's say your opponent special summons Primera on their turn, you would then be able, they would go Primera Chainlink 1, you'd do Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chills Chainlink 2, because your opponent's trigger has to trigger first before yours, and you would negate the Primera. If they were to summon the Primera on your turn, they would summon the Primera, and then you as the turn player would have to activate your trigger on summon to negate the Primera, and the Primera's trigger summon would be able to activate, and it would resolve with Primera searching, then being negated. So it really does depend on the kind of opponent's turn or your turn on how the order this card works, so always keep that in mind. But a very good card, because again, all of these effect negation cards pair very well with any other hand trap, and a lot of times 2 hand traps will stop in their tracks. Next we have Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This is a monster card that activates whenever your opponent activates a spell trap or monster effect on the field. You can send this card from the hand to the grave, destroy that card on the field. So this is very good against cards that are activating and then using their effect. A normal field spell that activates and does something like, T-limit field spell. That's an example of an effect that activates when the card's activated, where a card like Stand Up Centur-Ion has an ignition effect, so you have to activate the card, and then after it's on the field successfully, you can choose to use the effect. And if that's the only card on your field, your opponent could Ghost Ogre you and probably end your turn. So that's something to consider. Ghost Ogre is also pretty good in the meta right now because it can counter certain cards like Cartesia, which are popular in Snake Eye to some degree. It also counters Tempai, which is very good. It can counter cards like Appaloosa or IP. So there are some good uses for this card, but the main reason it's seeing a lot of play right now is because Tempai has a lot of hype, and this can help stop Tempai dragons as well as Centur-Ion. Next we have Nibiru. It's a very good card. Stop your opponent from overextending. It says during the main phase, each your opponent normal special summons 5 or more times. It's a quick effect. Used during either turn. You can tribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible. Special summon this card from your hand. That's special summon a token to your opponent's field. That's a rock light level 11 attack. Questionable defense, questionable. Your opponent's field. The token's attack and defense becomes the combined original attack and defense of the attributed monsters. It's a very good board wipe. And a lot of times people would play around this by summoning a Omni Negate, which can negate monster spells or traps, or release a monster negate from hand. And you could stop this by pairing any of your effect negation cards with Nibiru. So confirming when they're trying to negate, effectively when they're trying to negate, or ghost mortaring the monster on summon, and then so the negate doesn't work, and then Nibiruing it. So lots of interesting things you could do to kind of combine with Nibiru to kind of blow up your opponent's board, and then you have the combo of Nibiru and effect failure, allowing you to start your plays even with just these 2 hand traps. Next we have Shifter. The best kind of hand trap in the game is if you have no cards in your grave. Quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the grave until the end of the next turn. Any card sent to the grave is banished. So this is very good because it pretty much lets you shut off either player's graveyard for 2 turns. And the nice thing is you can do this on your turn, and even on your opponent's turn, the graveyard is banished. When it's back to you, the graveyards are open. So definitely a very strong card. Stops most decks in the game, and is a kind of a big boost to Centur-Ion being allowed to play this card now. Next we have Dueling Lockbird. If a card's added from the main deck to the hand except during the draw phase, you can send this card from hand to grave as cost. The rest of this turn, your opponent cannot add cards from either player main deck to their hand. So this is a nice card against any decks that try to search a lot. Any decks that needs to search multiple times over and over will get stopped by Dueling Lockbird. Also, you have the ability to play around this card by trying to summon in the draw phase. Your deck doesn't really search that much, so you're fine if you're just using the Centur-Ion cards. And if you can special summon during the draw phase, you could still search while not having to worry about Dueling Lock. So definitely something to consider. Next we have Cyframe Gear Gamma. This is a Cyframe monster that is now only at 1, making the card a lot less playable, but you can sometimes combine it with other Cyframe cards to make it pretty good and still usable, since you have to play a brick, which is Driver, which does nothing. It's just an engine requirement to summon out. You don't necessarily want just playing one good card to one bad card. You want to try playing as many good cards to bad cards, and as few bad cards as possible. Usually I wouldn't go over like 2 to 1. Cyframe Gear Gamma is a card that cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned by a card effect. When your opponent activates a monster effect, and you control no monsters, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand and 1 Cyframe Driver from your hand, deck, or grave. If you do, negate the activation and destroy the card. So this destroys any monster effect. This is very good going second. You could potentially use this in your deck because you can set up plays where maybe you just do stand up, place Primera in the spell trap zone, and leave your board open, allowing you to use Gamma on your opponent's turn and then bring out Primera to synchro. So there's some different things you can do. You can also use Trudea and the Driver to go into Chaos Angels, and it just needs a light or dark. So it's also awesome. So I think it's a very good card that synergizes well in this deck, and I do like it a lot. But this is only a card I would side deck. Next you have Delta. It's pretty much the same thing as Driver, but instead of destroying monsters, it destroys spells and traps. There's also a trap version of this, but traps aren't as prevalent. So this is the only one I'd really be playing right now. But Cyframe Gear Delta is a nice way to stop a lot of your opponent's very strong spell cards. And it could potentially be a way that you can trick your opponent into trying to Cosmic your stand-up if you don't have another monster on field, and then you could Delta the Cosmic. So there's some synergy in the deck, and I like this card a lot. So next we have Cartesia Fenrir. If you control no monsters, you can special this card from your hand. You'll use each effect of Fenrir once per turn. During the main phase, you can add 1 Cartesia monster from deck to hand, and when this declares an attack, if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can target 1 face-up card your opponent controls, banish it face down. So this is an interesting card because in paper,
it makes a lot of sense in the deck. You know, the deck plays a very hand trap heavy game, so you love cards like this when the game is simplified because it helps you control the game. And this deck doesn't necessarily like facing against this card either. It can be very stubborn and annoying. The other thing that's nice about this card is because you're discarding cards for this stand-up Centur-Ion, this can let you search a card to send, so you don't lose hand advantage. But the issue with this card is that by summoning it, you won't be able to play under Nibiru because your main summons will happen on the 5th summon. You'll also lose more to draw if you shotgun the search effect first, and if they draw you lose out on the search effect. So that's one reason why I've been hesitant on Cartesia Fenrir, and you kind of play this weird mind game where if your opponent's playing Nibiru and they, see you're playing Centur-Ion, they might be like, this card's useless, I'm going to side it out. You bring in Fenrir because they didn't think you're going to play it, and now you have a good advantage. But if your opponent keeps in Nibiru thinking maybe you'll side in the Fenrir, it becomes a risky gamble because you don't draw Fenrir, Nibiru is dead. You do draw Fenrir, did they keep it in? So it's kind of a risky card that you can definitely play, but it's not just all upside that normally would be in decks that want to play in a very heavy hand trap format. Fenrir is usually a very good card that excels in these types of formats. Next we have Cosmic Cyclone. You can pay 1,000 life points to target one spell trap on the field and banish it. A very simple effect, but a very strong effect. Works very well against a lot of cards in the meta like Fire King, Voiceless Voice, Centur-Ion, different cards that have continuous spells or field spells. Plus, the stand-up card can be protected from card effects when it comes to destruction, but not banishment. So Cosmic Cyclone is a way to play around the field spell, kind of end your opponent's turn so they can't synchro summon, they can't calamity lock you, keeps you very safe. Toss Out Designator is a cool card. Since you declare a card, you banish that declared card from your main deck, and you get to negate its effects. So it's a way to play around a lot of hand traps in a very hand trap heavy format. You could also use it to potentially play around board breakers like Cosmic Cyclone going first if you think your opponent's going to set it going second. You can also use it on other key engine cards if you're combining engines in your deck. So I was using this for Branded. So that way if I would go first against Brand, I could use either Ash Blossom on it or I could use Crossout on it. So it gives you more versatility as well when you kind of combine these little engines, which is interesting. Super Poly is a very good fusion card. It's a quick play, so you use on user turn. And discard a card, fusion one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from the field as material. This is mostly used with either Mud Dragon, which is 2 monsters with the same attribute, different types. Draco's Fotelia, a fusion, 1 dark monster, or Garua, 2 monsters with the same type. This could be a very good card. I like this going first because you can utilize this to go into Garua and Chaos Angel. You can also use this against some decks that have some very strong fields, which is also nice, blowing apart their boards and allowing you to capitalize on them. And a lot of times I usually only go for the Super Poly in my builds when I could make Garua or potentially Draco's Fotelia. I was not playing Mud Dragons. It's not that great this format. I just didn't have the space. But a very good card that I think is good in Centur-Ion specifically over some other decks right now that are going to play generically. So I do really like this card. There's one issue is they can go into Nightmare Phoenix, popping this card, but you're actually able to use them before that point and still capitalize off of it. And then next we have some Floodgate cards here. We have There Can Be Only One. It says each player can only control 1 type of monster, and if they control 2 or more, they have to send them to the grave. And you can't control 2 or more once it's on the field. So the nice thing with your deck is that you're pretty much all different types. You have a Spellcaster, a Pyro, a Machine, a Dragon. The only overlapping synergies right now is the Dragon because the Centur-Ion is a Machine. So you'd have to be careful that you don't go Gargoyle into Centur-Ion because you can't do that. Auxilius, you already have a Dragon on the field. So that's the only thing you got to really worry about. But this can stop a lot of decks. Potentially stop Snake Eye since they can't go into Poplar since they already have Ash on field and some other plays, but they do have ways to kind of extend around it potentially based off their hand. It's not necessarily as great against that, but it does stop a lot of decks like Melodious, Hurley, Tempi Dragon, Labyrinth, any decks that summon the same type. This is a very good card against them. Next you have Anti-Spell. This can be a good card if you're expecting to have a very board breaker format. And once you already get your field spell on the field, you don't have too many spells you need to activate at this point. It can be a very good way to shut out different games, good against pendulum decks, and very solid overall. So it can be a good card. It was hit to 1, which is nice, because it's been very deadly in pendulum formats and other formats, and very much hurts board breaker strategies. So this is a very good card for that. Definitely something I'd consider playing if you want a one-of. You can also consider Skill Drain. It's not my favorite Floodgate in the deck, and I'd probably just play the Counter Trap before I'd play Skill Drain, but you do summon a lot of very big monsters like Centur-Ion Legatia, which is 3,500. A lot of decks would have a hard time dealing with this, and you have the ability to just play under these big monsters and kind of just aggro beat down your opponent. The last card in the main deck is Skull Marked Ladybug. It's a combo you can do in time.
says when this card is sent to the grave, increase your life points by 1,000. And that works with the Diabolantis Menacing Mantis. It says if this card is synchro summoned, you can send an insect or a plant from your deck to the grave up to the number of non-tuners used for synchro summon. So something to note with this is the Skullmark Ladybug is a win effect, so it needs to be the last thing that happened for its effect to increase your life points. And the nice thing is when you synchro summon, the last thing that's happening is the Diabolantis is triggering its effect. There's nothing activating later, so you would be able to gain 1,000 life points and win time by going into a level 8 synchro. A way this wouldn't work is if you tried sending this to the graveyard with Centur-Ion Stand Up, you would send it to the grave, but the last thing to happen would be that you'd place a card on the field, so the Skullmark Ladybug would miss timing. So that covers the main deck. Pretty in depth, but hopefully that helps any new players. I'm just going to jump into the extra deck options for cards you can play. The extra deck, we have the 2 Centurion cards. We have Centur-Ion Auxilia and Centur-Ion Legacia. Auxilia has the option where face-up cards in your spell and trap zone cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can only use each of the following effects Centur-Ion Auxilia once per turn. If this card is special summoned, add a Centurion card from deck to hand. During the end phase, place one Centurion non-synchro monster is banished or in your grave in your spell and trap. So the reason why this is nice is because it does a lot of things for the deck. One, Legacia was a good card, but it just drew you a random card. Centur-Ion Auxilia actually lets you search the cards you need, so make sure going first play is more reliable, which is nice. You also get the ability to get cards from banish during the end phase. So before Bystials used to shut down the deck, Legacia can only get from the grave. And now if they banish your card, it's a non-targeting place. So even if they banish it when this effect triggers, they banish it, you just choose that card and place it. So a nice way to play through cards, which is very helpful. And it's also very good in like runic or stunning matchups because you can just sit on Primera in the spell trap and Auxilia in the monster zone. And it can be hard for those decks to kind of deal with these to a degree because this protects the spells and traps from being destroyed by card effects, and this protects the monster from being destroyed by card effect. So very good card and gives the deck a lot of uses. It also allows any deck that can make a level 12 synchro potentially splash a small Centur-Ion package to be able to make Calamity in any deck, so that's a little scary. Hope that doesn't get this card banned. But if anything, I really do think they would just ban Calamity since that's the main problem. Next you have Legacia. So it has another continuous effect, kind of similar to Primera and Auxilia, that this card makes it with monster 2,000 less attack, can't be destroyed by battle. So this is kind of a nice way to protect your weaker Centurions from being destroyed since they all have 2,000 less attack. So that can be nice. It says you can only use the following effects Centur-Ion Legacia once per turn. If this card is special summon, draw one card. Then you can destroy one monster opponent controls the highest attack. During the end phase, place one non-synchro Centurion monster from your hand or grave in your spell and trap zone. So instead of Auxilia getting like hand, grave, and banished, Legacia only gets grave was a target for Bystials, but it's very nice in a grind game because you can draw a card and it's optional to destroy a card if you want. A very good card in the deck, and currently my builds I'm just playing 1 and 1. But this is definitely something I consider a pure build playing 2-2. It's very nice in a grind game. Next we have Crimson Dragon. This is the card that lets you cheat out these level 12 synchros, Calamity being the most broken, and then Blazar being the next best, and then kind of Red Nova, which I think will eventually probably replace Calamity when it gets. Crimson Dragon has the effect where it's, if this card is special summon, you can add a spell or trap that mentions Crimson Dragon from your deck to your hand. But the main thing is it's a quick effect that we're using. You can target a face-up 7 or higher synchro on the field, except Crimson Dragon, return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon one Dragon Synchro from the extra deck with the same level as the target monster. This is treated as a synchro summon. You only use each effect of Crimson Dragon once per turn. So this is nice because you can kind of cheat out your cards. You can target your Auxilia, summon out the Calamity, lock the opponent out, make your plays. So it's very good. Then we have Calamity. So when this card is synchro summon, you can activate the effect. For this turn, your opponent cannot activate card or effects in the field. Your opponent cannot activate card or effects in response to this effect's activation. This card battles and destroys a monster. Inflict damage to opponent equal to the original attack. Its owner's possession is destroyed by card effect. You got one level 8 dragon synchro monster in your grave and special summon it. So this lets you get level 8 in synchros, but we're not playing any level 8 synchro dragons, so we don't have to worry about that. But the main thing is that it locks you out of the game, which is good for stopping your opponent. Honestly, good for the game. Next, we have Blazar. This is a nice card to go into in matchups where either Calamity is not very good, like Labyrinth, or decks that don't activate a lot of cards. They're more like setting cards. But this is a nice card that, for cost, banishes itself to the end phase, and then you can either negate the activation or a card effect of a card. You can also stop the summon of a card, or you can also stop an attack and in the battle phase. So a very good card to stop your opponent. Next, we have Red Nova Dragon. This card must be synchro summoned first. Gains 500 attack for each tune in the grave. Cannot be destroyed by card effects. And once per turn, when your opponent monster effect is activated, or when a monster declares an attack, quick effect, you can banish this card, also banish all cards your opponent controls. So I like this a lot because you can potentially use this to kind of banish your opponent's whole board, but it's not as good as Calamity because they can kind of play around it to a degree. So if Calamity gets banned, I'll probably replace it with this possibly. But right now, if your extra space is tight, I would cut this because it really only ever go for these two. So next we have Enigmaster Pack Pit. This is a level 8 synchro. It's a tuner non-tuner, so very generic. This card is synchro summoned or sent to the grave. Target one monster in your graveyard or face up monster your opponent controls. Discard one card, and if you do place that monster in the owner's spawn trap zone, the face up continuous trap. During either player's turn, if this card is a continuous trap, you can special summon one face up monster card from your spell and trap zone. You'll use each effectiveness for backpit once per turn. So the nice thing is that when this card is synchro summoned, you can interrupt your opponent's plays. You can also interrupt your opponent's plays by using it as a synchro summon. You can also use it to help out your cards as well, depending on the lines you play. Like if you start with Chudea and you get hand trapped, you start with Premier, you get hand trapped. After those two hand traps, if you don't have Enigmaster, it's not as good. The Enigmaster can discard a card, place the Premier back to the spell trap, and then synchro on the opponent's turn. When they're supposed to summon out, you're putting an opponent's card back in the spell trap zone, while also stopping your opponent's plays. Next we have Chaos Angel. This is a very good synchro, probably the best 10 in the game right now since Burn Deflor is banned, but pretty much on summon, you can summon this by using a light or dark, and you can treat that as a tuner, so you actually can summon this with a light and a dark without a tuner, which is cool. And if you use light monsters, the card you control is unaffected by activated monster effects. If you use dark monsters, monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle, and if you use both, you get both effects. So very good card. Next we have Bystial Dispatter. This is nice in the Bystial versions, or even maybe the Fallen of Albaz version for getting Fallen of Albaz back. So you can target a light or dark monster, special summon to your field. When your opponent activates a card or effect, you can target one banished card, shuffle it into the deck. Then if you shuffled your deck, destroy that monster. Or if you shuffled it into your opponent's deck, negate the activated effect. This is a nice card, either destroying or negating effects. Pretty balanced way of making a monster like this. So this could be an option, especially in the Bystial version. Next we have the Magistus Maiden. It's really the only thing that we're using it for is that it only takes a level 4 or lower, so it lets you make Primera into a Magistus Maiden, and it works off SP, because if SP is made using a Fusion, Synchro, or Link, and any other monster that's an effect monster, you can target a card in the field or in either grave and banish it. You can also quick effect target 2 face-up monsters on the field, including a monster you control, banish them both until the end phase. So this can be a nice way to play around cards, especially going second. I wouldn't necessarily try to make this going first because you want to have your play set up to capitalize, but this is a very good card for that, and it does work very well with a lot of the deck. And the main reason we're using the Maiden is just to have the requirements to get the banish off Little Knight. Next we have Garua. This mostly is used for its super poly target of being able to work with 2 monsters of the same type and attribute, but when it's sent to the grave you get to draw a card, and also any battle damage your opponent takes is doubled. Stapelia is another super poly target that takes 1 fusion and 1 dark. This can be good against branded or any fusion decks, since most of the time they use dark monsters, and it has the quick effect to target a face-up monster opponent controls, place a counter on it. Its level 2 or higher becomes 1, and while it has that counter, its effects are negated from the continuous effect of Stapelia. Then we also have Mud Dragon of the Swamp. This is another very good super poly target because it's very generic, and it's just 2 monsters with the same attribute but different type. In this case would be like Chudea and Auxilia, could be super polyed into a Mud Dragon, and also has the option where you can declare 1 attribute as a quick effect for cost, and this becomes that attribute to the end of the turn, and monsters with the same attribute of this card cannot be targeted. So a pretty good card to go into. Not the greatest against like some of the Fire King decks, but is still a decent card in a lot of other matchups. But due to this space, I'm just not playing. Next we have Typhon. I think this is a mandatory card in any deck like this because you need an ability to kind of control in a simplified state. This lets you turn a hand top or any negated Centurion into more of a wall, which can be very helpful. Definitely something to consider. And all you have to do is that during the turn or turn after your opponent special summons 2 or more monsters from the extra deck, you can also XC summon this card by using 1 monster you control with the highest attack. Your choice of Tide, then you transfer heroes to that card if it has any, and if you do, you cannot special summon or normal summon for the rest of its turn while it's XYZ monsters on the field. Neither player can activate the effects of the 3000 or more attack. So this is nice because you can use this to stop 3000 or more attack weight monsters from using their effects, which is usually pretty good since a lot of times those cards usually omni-negates when they have those types of stats a lot of the times, so we'll be able to stop those. And again, very good into an opponent's boards. You can even normal summon a hand trap, especially summon with the extra deck more than twice, and then you can make Typhon. Other cards you can consider is Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend, just a way to kind of burn in time. You can use this on your turn where once per turn you can destroy as many special summon effect monsters on the field as possible with attack less than or equal to this. Inflict 5 which would damage your opponent. So a way to burn, but you can only do this on your turn. You'd have to kind of wait 3 turns to use this really. Next is the Diablantis Menacing Mantis. This is mostly just to summon the Skullmarked Ladybug for time. You could also turn this card as a tuner as well if you need it to combine with other cards like Judea and this. This can become a tuner, and then you have the level 12 Synchro. We also have Abyss Dweller and Paguska. Abyss Dweller is really good for locking out your opponent's graveyard. It says it's a quick effect. You can detach a material from this card. Your opponent cannot activate card effects in the grave. So this deck can go into rank 4s very easy with Judea and Primera as well, but you won't be able to synchro summon that turn. You can also go into Paguska as a way to kind of counter and stall out the game. It says 2 effects. While this card's in attack position, it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And while it's in defense position, you change all face-up monsters on the field to defense and negate the activated effects of monsters when the effect was activated. This can be a nice way to stall out in defense mode or potentially attack into since it can't be destroyed by card effects. Next we have Zeus, another card you consider playing if you're playing more Exceeds. You could even play this with the Typhon if you go into the Typhon and then go into Zeus later. But overall, I don't think Zeus is very needed in this deck, and there's other cards I'd play first. We also have the Photon Lord, Orcus Evening Star, and the Undead Vampire. These are rank 8s that can work well with the Horus Package. Photon Lord's a way to play around Nibiru with the Photon Lord being a way to negate it. You can use this by just putting 2 horses on the field. Dingirsu is a nice way that you could send a card your opponent controls to grave, so it's a non-targeting send. It could be a good way to get rid of annoying cards. Then you have Vampire, so the Undead. This can work nice in decks you're playing talents. And this card's nice because if you're using a monster you stole from your opponent, that monster can be treated as an 8 for this rank summon, which works also well with your Horus cards, which is also very nice. And this card has the effect that neither player can target or card effects of special summon monsters except those special summoned from the grave. And you can detach a material from this card. Each player sends the top 4 of their deck to the grave, and any monster that was sent to the graveyard can special summon one of those monsters. So this can be a good card. I mostly would like it for the ability to turn any monster I take from my opponent that has a level into an 8 to exceed with it. Next we have the Branded Package. This is pretty standard. This is Albion. This one, when Fusion Summon, lets you Fusion Summon another level 8 or lower Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing Fusion materials from your hand, field, or grave. And also it has an effect that in the end phase, if it was sent to the grave, you can add to your hand or set one brand as well, trap directly from your deck. So usually these aren't very needed. The main thing for this is that you get the Fusion Summon with Branded Fusion, allowing you to banish this and the Vault of Elbaz in grave to either make the Searing Dragon over here, or we can just go straight into Mirror Jade. Next, you can do Lubellion the Searing Dragon. This is nice because you can actually fuse with cards that are already banished, so this can work well with Primera. This also works well with other cards, so very good card here. It also works well under Shifter because of the fact that you can, take the cards that were banished because they were sent to the banished instead of the grave. You can put those back in the deck to make a play as well. Next we have Rimrum. This can be nice if you're playing a bigger branded package because this can allow you to get Vault of Elbaz and make more plays if you can keep it in the grave. A lot of times I found the issue with the branded package is because I'm only playing one Elbaz. If anything happens where I can't play, it's pretty much dead. So that's just why I'm not really playing a heavier package right now. But Rimrum does have a very cool effect that when a Fusion, Synchro, or Exceed, or Link is activated, you can negate that effect. Then you can return one monster from the field to the hand. So you can either return one of theirs, one of yours. Very good card, but kind of expensive, and I just didn't see it coming up. It was a good call for now. Next we have Mirror Jade. This is your main boss you're trying to go into with the Branded Fusion. Just a way to get a good monster to apply some pressure and some banishing onto the field and control the game. It says this takes Vault of Elbaz when Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, or Link. So you can even use this with Vault of Elbaz link with your opponent's stuff. So it's something to consider. And it says you can only control one Mirror Jade, and then as a quick effect, you can send one Fusion monster from an extra deck to the grave. It mentions Vault of Elbaz, banish one monster. And your opponent makes this Fusion Summon card in your control lead the field. You can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase. So this is a nice way to get a board nuke in, which is very good, and it's pretty much the main one you want to make. You could also make this by just normal summoning the Vault of Elbaz and fusing with your opponent's board. And then next, we just have the cards that work with the Cartesia. So this card has a fusion effect to send a level 6 or higher light or dark from your deck to the grave. So that could be helpful. It also has an effect that if a monster is special summoned to your opponent's field, you can banish this card from your field or grave, special summon one Dogmatica monster from your deck, or one Despia monster from your extra deck. So this can be nice because you could, ideally have this card on field with Primera. You can use Primera, go into a synchro like Legacia, pop a card, draw a card, and then when your opponent special summons, you can banish this from grave, getting one of your Despian fusions out from your extra deck, which could be nice. You just got to see how they work together. And then you have Despian Courtless, another potential super poly target, as well as something you can make off the Ignorant Grignal, which is just one Despian monster. Then you have one light or dark monster. It also has a quick effect that you can change the attack of all monsters currently on the field to 0 till the end of this turn. So at level 8 or higher fusions. And this is face a card and this under control leaves the field because of Albaz. You can add to your hand or special summon found of Albaz or Despia from your deck. So that's something good to note as well. So next we have Despian Proskinium. This is one Despia plus one light plus one dark. So you need one of each versus the other one just need one of the other. So during the main phase, you can target one fusion, Synchro, Exceed, or Link in your opponent's grave, banish it, or special summon to your field. While this card destroys an opponent's monster, its attack or defense, which is originally higher, you can only use each Despian Proskinium once per turn. So what I like about this is this lets you kind of interrupt your opponent's plays in the grave by banishing the fusion, Synchro, Exceed, or Link, by either special summoning it or destroying it. So I think that's very cool. And overall, a solid card, and not bad in the Snake Eye matchup. So this is kind of all the main cards we covered. I hope this helps for any new players. It's quite long, but we went through everything pretty in depth. And again, this is for new players, so hopefully this will kind of help you understand all these cards, how they synergize with the deck, and ways to go about playing them. So what we'll do now is jump into the next section.